Hi everyone and welcome back. Mindy here with you today, and in today's video I'm going to be doing a little bit of stamping and a little bit of ombre ink blending. I'm going to start off by showing you some of the supplies that I'll be using in today's video. The first one is this large stamp set, which is Boho Flowers from Gina K Designs. It also has a coordinating die set that I will be using. I love the detail on these images. Next, I have some champagne embossing powder that I keep in a little container because that is about 2 jars worth. Then I also have some layering white and heavy base weight cardstock. For my ink colors, I'll be using Key Lime and the Lucky Clover ink to do the ombre ink blending. I also have the black Amalgam ink and the Gina K Designs Embossing and Watermark ink. And I have my powder tool, since we'll be doing the heat embossing. I have some blender brushes, the Connect glue, the Thermal Web purple tape, and this is the new skinny one that they have, and then also some foam squares and maybe a few other things here and there. The first thing I want to do is start off by stamping my images, and I do want quite a few of them because I want to fill a background. So I'm starting off with the layering weight cardstock that I have cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. That's just kind of my typical go-to size. I can always trim things down. And I'm stamping that with the Amalgam ink. This is such a great universal ink, whether you are Copic coloring, just stamping, watercoloring, colored pencils. What I really love about this ink is it will not bleed. So it is going to capture all of the fine details of these images. Then I can just flip my paper. I'm going to stamp them on the bottom part of this piece of cardstock. And I am stamping this twice because I wanted to have a really good impression of those detailed parts of the images. So then next, I'm just taking the coordinating dies. I'm going to line them up over the images, and I'll hold it in place with the Thermal Web purple tape. I'm really liking this new purple tape that they came out with. It's a skinnier size, a lot easier for me to manage, and it's not ripping my paper. So once I have those held in place, I'm going to flip that over onto my magnetic sheet and then run that through my Gemini Junior. Next, I'm going to start figuring out my background. So this is another 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 sheet of cardstock. This is actually the heavy weight. I do like to have a heavier weight when I'm doing a card front. So I'm laying out my images about where I would want them to go, making sure they're kind of spaced nicely, some hanging off of the edge of the cardstock that I can always trim down later. And then some of them I am applying with the dot runner, and then a few of them I do put the foam adhesive behind there. So I have 2 butterflies with the foam adhesive, and then that larger flower off on the left-hand side also has some foam adhesive to it. And I like to use my tweezers to apply that just so it keeps my fingers out of the way and I can see exactly where it's going. Then I can come in and just trim that excess off with my nonstick scissors. And I do have adhesive on the entire piece of these images. So what I like to do is to save these pieces because then I can come back into my card and put them off on the edge there just to kind of give it a more random look to it, like I didn't plan it out. And since it's already adhesive, I'll just push that down to stick to my cardstock and trim off that excess. Now to start my ombre ink blending, I'm using 2 different colors from Gina K Designs. The first one is the Key Lime, and then I'll come in with Lucky Clover. So I'm taking the Key Lime with this blending tool and I'm just softly adding a strip of color all the way across this cardstock. This is the layering cardstock from Gina, and I am finding I really love this for ink blending. It has such a really smooth surface, and once Gina's inks dry, they leave a seamless blend. I mean, it is just absolutely perfect. So once I have that first layer down, just making sure I have a good strip there. I wasn't really measuring anything out. Then I'll come in with Lucky Clover. Now for an ombre look, what ombre really is this just has different shades of color that gradually go from light to dark. So it doesn't matter what color you use. You could use two different completely different colors as long as they kind of go from a dark to a light. So that's what I'm doing here, is adding that Lucky Clover starting from the left-hand side. And I'm adding a little bit of pressure there on the edge, and I'm going to gradually lighten my pressure as I'm getting towards the other side of the cardstock. So the harder you push, the more ink you're going to get on that paper. So if you want a light blend, you just don't put as much pressure down. And then, like I said, once the inks dry, they will give you just the most perfect seamless blend. So just kind of touching up there a little bit with the key lime. And then I do take this strip and I'm just trimming off some of the excess. And I will save that other piece of cardstock there for later. I will use that to do some stamping. Now for my actual card, I'm using the heavyweight white cardstock. And my ink blended panel and then also this stamped background that I have, I did trim them down a little bit. So it's a little less than 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Kind of in between. I didn't really measure. I just kind of trimmed off slivers. That way it's going to leave just that little bit of a white edge to it. And I did attach my ink blended panel to the bottom. And then my stamped piece can go right above that. And if you don't push down on your cardstock right away, you can kind of pick that up and reposition it if it was kind of crooked the first time like I was. And I had a little bit of a smudge there in the corner, which seems to be a habit of mine lately. So I just took the sand eraser and kind of buffed that away. Now for some stamping. This is a kind of a skinny sentiment that I'm going to add. I just lined it up in the bottom corner of my Misty tool. I love the font on this. It is so simple and so clean. And just using the Amalgam ink, I'm going to stamp that down. And then I will trim this down into a really skinny strip. I'll do that off screen. I'm going to take another piece. This is the heavyweight white cardstock. And I'm going to stamp the U. This is going to be kind of my bigger sentiment for the card. I prepped the cardstock with an anti-static powder tool, just kind of brushed that powder around. I just didn't want to have embossing powder be in places I didn't want it to be. So this is the Gina K Designs Embossing and Watermark ink. And what's really great about this is, yes, you can emboss with it, but if you stamp this onto some colored cardstock, it's just going to leave kind of a little bit darker of a shade, which is great for subtle backgrounds. So I did stamp that down, and then I'm just going to sprinkle on this champagne embossing powder. This is one of my favorite embossing powders right now. It's not really an in-your-face gold kind of color. It's kind of toned down a little bit. Really, really classy looking in my opinion. And then I just go ahead and heat that up with my heat tool till it's nice and melted. And when it's dry, I can take that coordinating die and line it up and attach it with the Thermal Web purple tape. This is going to leave just a little bit of a white border around the edges. And I also use the rest of this cardstock by taking that frame and die cutting it 4 more times. So what I want to do is stack these up. This is going to create just really nice dimension on the card. You could use some foam squares if you wanted. I just thought this gave kind of a more full look to having that dimension. So I'm attaching all of these layers with the Gina K Connect glue. I'll finish it off by attaching my top layer, which is the part that I had heat embossed. And then I'll give you a close-up shot here, and you can see how nice and thick that is. It's just a really nice full look. So this is going to go on my card, and I did notice when I was lining my sentiment up, is that the U is kind of going to overlap one of the butterflies that I had put foam squares on. So I need to kind of even out that depth. So what I'll do is just take some foam squares, I'm going to trim them down and add them to just the left-hand side of the sentiment, and then I'm going to add the Connect glue to the letter U that overlaps the butterfly, and that's going to just be really nice and even, so if I stick this in the mail, it's not going to be all bumpy. So just removing the backing of those foam squares, and I can line that up on my card and just making sure that I'm leaving room there so you can see my sentiment underneath. And that will finish up the actual card portion. So this is just a really nice, clean and simple card. It has some beautiful ink blending here that you can switch out to any colors that you prefer. I thought this would look really neat to have a coordinating envelope to go with it. So this is one of Gina's key lime envelopes, and this is the Crazy Daisy stencil. And this was such a really nice large stenciled image. I thought it would look great on the flap of the envelope. Now I do have some pixie spray on this, which is just a tacky adhesive. I already had that on the back from a previous use, so all I needed to do is kind of give that a good push down, and it stuck right to my envelope. And then I'm applying the Lucky Clover ink with these blender brushes. This is where the blender brushes really come in handy. Those bristles really work in between the intricacy of that stencil. So just a really nice light layer. And that's going to leave this beautiful design on the flap of my envelope. I might just go through and do a bunch of these because it's just so pretty and so universal. I will have all of the supplies listed down below in the video description, as well as a link to my website. Please hit the subscribe button if you would like to see more videos from me, and also click the little bell to be notified of when those new videos come out. Thanks again for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.